Welcome back to the Brighter Side of Blue, our worldwide podcast coming to you almost live from Columbo's Cafe and Tavern in Dogtown, home of the producer John.
The New Mirror.
Home of the New Mirror.
Yeah.
Producer John.
Yes.
I'm Danny.
I'm Tommy.
I'm JJ.
I'm producer John
And where did we get this?
from Russ Johnson.
Russ Johnson with Hooties?
Hooties at Rescue Haven. Yes. Russ, he heard the story. He's an avid listener. He heard the story, obviously, of the old mirror getting stolen.
And JJ cleaning that crime up?
Yes. Great job, JJ.
Thank you.
But he's had this for like 40 years in his den, and he said it belongs in a tavern. And he brought it to the house today, and he wanted Greg and Ryan to have it. And
That's
and
awesome.
It's on the wall.
So
That's cool.
I want Greg Columbo to know that the Brighter Side of Blue solved the crime
Yep.
and then replaced the mirror.
That's how we roll.
That's how we roll. You know why? Because it was JJ's unbelievable investigative skills.
Kind of like what the story we're going to hear about tonight earlier. We're on the same wavelength, me and Leishak.
Yeah, I mean,
But for the guy, it's going to. Greg said he's done hanging it. It's hung now for us, but he's going to screw that into the wall.
Yes, exactly.
yeah, it's going to screw in there. So, hey, great job with that investigation, getting the guy. So,
All right.
no. So anyway, Tommy, what do we have coming up?
Our interview with Bill McClellan. And we have Bill on. As you guys know, we tape on Thursday nights. We had the pleasure of interviewing Bill McClellan on Monday. For those of you that don't know, Bill McClellan is like St. Louis's
Columnist.
He is St. Louis's columnist. And he started out as a nighttime cop reporter, had a little office in headquarters. And we had, you guys can back that. We had just a great conversation with him.
It's something you see in movies, like back in the day when the reporters would go and have relationships with the police officers and go to bars together, hang out, and get information. I mean, he was right down there.
He had an office at headquarters, but he didn't stay in it. He roamed freely around headquarters, as he'll tell you.
And some of the stories.
There's a trust.
Trust.
Yep.
It's unheard of. That would never happen today.
And he talks about that. And then too, Bill just had his knee replaced, right? Yesterday?
So today is Thursday. This is being recorded yesterday.
So
wait
Bill,
to hear from him.
We hope you're, when you hear this, you're resting comfortably and you enjoy the show. And we thank you for coming on.
And Bill promised he's going to get on the pickleball court with me.
And he also says he's coming back on the show.
Yeah.
He could have went on for hours.
Right.
Yep.
We could talk to him for hours. He just had,
Why did he get his knee replaced if he's just going to play pickleball?
Oh, here we go.
That's what I was wondering.
Well, JJ, it's a great question.
All right, listen. I'm tired of you being nice to me.
What are you talking about?
Well, I heard that your wife is mad at you for being so mean to me. When I understand it.
No, she's beyond angry. She said she will quit listening to the show if I continue to be mean to you. And I said, well, it's just kind of our thing. And she goes, okay, well, then the show's not my thing.
Well, I like the fact that all the women in your life, your mother, your wife, and your daughter, I think I'm number one, their favorite character on this earth.
And I think you deserve it.
Here we go.
You know what? You better knock it off because I'm going to start ripping on you, dude. She's going to be mad at me. She's like, why are you being so mean to Danny?
Then your wife will
that long neck
mad
mother.
at you for being mean to Dan.
Yeah, what's going on here?
Round circle.
I know, it's creeping me out.
For the Bill interview, how'd you like our apparel?
Yes, we were
from one of our first sponsors and biggest fan, the Queen of Downtown, Cece.
I got one of her scarves on right
now. And you're wearing one of the
She
scarves.
gave us a
Yeah,
scarf.
I think I might wear one of her ties next week.
I like it. And
I got the socks on right now.
She didn't give socks, John.
Yeah, she did.
Oh, yeah, she did.
Came with the tie.
Yeah,
well, she wanted. She's one of the most patriotic American citizens that I know, and she wants it to be cool to have the respect the flag, and so she gave us those hoodies that are flag hoodies.
Thank you very much, Cece.
Yes, she's she's a very proud immigrant.
Yes, she's very
she's very proud of being in the United States.
She came the right way, right?
Well, yes. No, Danny's harboring her.
I'm just saying, if you come the right way, you're good.
Yeah,
She was a very successful woman.
Oh, very successful.
Unreal.
She's a mentor of mine. So, anyway, what's going on with the YSL?
Oh, come on now.
Fannie Willis is killing it.
The YSL trial, which we've talked about numerous times in the past, finally came to an end. I know on like Halloween, I think when we were in JJ's basement, 4 of those guys, there was that they were going over a mistrial thing, and 4 more pled out of the 6, and then it went down to 2. And these 2 took it to the end. And after 1 year of trial, not every day, but 1 year of a trial, just short of 1 year, there was 28 people indicted on a 54-count indictment. Not one of these guys have gotten any additional time in jail for any of these charges. Even when they pled, all of it. They got time served, or they might be in jail still, but they just got, their sentencing just got melded into whatever prison time they were doing for whatever they're in there for. Not one person.
And she and the key person that got reelected,
Fannie Willis,
gets reelected. That's unreal.
It's the biggest judicial buffoonery that's ever been displayed in the United States. I mean, they have 75 witnesses, and not when them 4 dropped out at Halloween. One of them was the main guy, that Young Thug, the rapper, who they all tried to say anybody that listened to his music, and he's from Atlanta, so anybody that listened to his music was in a gang. And all these guys, I mean, it would be like in St. Louis that anybody that listened to Nelly, and they would call them the St. Lunatics and say they were part of a gang, and then try to say all their crimes were related. Oh. It was and then it was witness after witness. One guy'd be high, the next guy, I mean, it's just hostile witness after hostile witness. Even some of the police that testified were like, I don't even want to be here, man. I mean,
so all Fannie Willis did was make a bunch of people famous and wealthy, right?
Woody's out there killing it still.
He's out there killing it.
All the lawyers are just beloved in Atlanta now. Every defense lawyer. The witness, or the prosecution lawyers, a gal by the name of Love and Hilton, are completely hated. They were the worst. It was the worst case I've ever. Now I just got highlights of it. But knowing what I know here with our federal system and our state attorneys, at no time would this ever have been even a question whether this was going to court as a RICO trial. Now, they had decent crimes in there. They had a murder in there. But they tried to tie 28 people into one murder, rather than just going and getting a guy that murdered the guy and putting the best case they could together on that. And they tried to string this. It was so loosely strung together. And I mean, at one point in time, towards the beginning of the trial, and the judge got on about it, their witnesses wouldn't even be ready. They wouldn't even be in the building. And they're like, our next witness isn't here. They'd have to wait like an hour and a half while they brought them in. It was the biggest, and I think the number I heard was $4.5 million they estimate was spent on this trial.
Who brought the case to the feds? Was it
No, this was a state. This was
that's right.
This was state.
They tried to do a RICO trial on a state level.
Right.
The feds don't even like doing RICO trials because they're so complicated and convoluted. And she tried to do it with her, with her ragtag.
She'll never do it again.
Yeah.
Oh no, there's 8 people left out of that 28. The first half of the trial was only like 16 or 17 of them, and then of the ones left, 6 recently. Just I think I heard it today. 6 of them took all pleas, and not one of them went to jail. Or I mean, the same thing. So what they're doing is that whole, we convicted 17 people.
Okay.
Well, that's just to put the old feather in the cap.
Right.
It's not working. It's not working. We're not buying.
And they just a lot of these guys are famous now. I mean, they're just and again, as somebody that enjoyed putting people in jail, felt bad for these people just sitting there listening to this silliness. And it was unbelievable.
Colossal waste of taxpayers' dollars.
It was some of the craziest shit I've ever seen.
That's.
And then again, it was an embarrassment to the entire judicial system. It's an embarrassment to all the other prosecutors out there, all the other policemen out there. It was a complete fucking embarrassment. And then and it was funny though, but it was a complete embarrassment.
Right.
Wow. On a lighter note, and a note that I feel we should be celebrating. Was it 51 years ago today, Producer John?
1933.
91.
91 years. Yeah. No, it's more than that.
91.
91 years ago. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Jeez.
Leave the math to
91
me.
years ago today,
91.
Prohibition ended.
Yes, it was. It came to an end.
That was our day. I would consider that our day. That should be a national holiday.
It really should. There's so many interesting stories
Wait a
and
minute,
movies
today's
that
the
come
anniversary
from
of that?
Prohibition.
Today's the anniversary of that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the 21st.
For your
21st
Cheers.
Amendment.
Cheers. Cheers.
Cheers
Cheers.
to make it the best decision ever made in the
Quit
United
hiding.
States.
You know what? An interesting thing about Prohibition, you probably already know, it was not illegal to drink alcohol even during Prohibition. It was only illegal to manufacture, distribute, or sell.
Yeah.
So if
Or
you were
in transport, yeah.
and transport, yeah.
I don't believe that.
Distribute, yeah.
Distribute.
Why would they raid bars and stuff then?
Well,
If there's
because they
people
were
who drink,
selling it.
They didn't. So the people in there didn't get arrested. The drinking. Didn't
If
get
you were
arrested?
just drinking it, it's not illegal.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not know.
Possessing it or
That's good useless information.
yeah.
So-
Well, no, it's just we're just talking about the Prohibition history.
So if you
Jason.
had a big, I'm sure people like they knew Prohibition was coming, so they probably stocked up on. Like I would have just bought another house to put all the booze in.
Hey, did you ever hear the
Kind of
story?
like a snowstorm.
Do you know the
Yeah.
story about Charlie Gito's mother?
no,
She actually was doing that back in the day. And on the hill, there's a little gas station now.
oh yeah.
And actually, Joe Smagala opened it. It was a little gas station.
Yes.
They
Yeah, right.
made a little barbecue place. She had a thing in the basement, and she stored booze down
Charlie
there.
did tell me that story.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
It was a great story.
Was it a bar? Or that
No,
was
she
just-
was.
no,
She was just storing.
that was
She
just
was.
a
Storing
hideout?
booze.
Yeah.
Yeah. During
And where would they
Prohibition.
sell it?
I don't know, but she was moving it. She
Good
was moving it.
speakeasy. Them speakeasies look like they were tight.
I think she might have even went to the penitentiary.
Yeah, they
For
look
a
fun.
minute.
I'm guessing.
Yeah.
that-
Well, they said like even when Prohibition was lifted, it wasn't a big deal because every state had to like make it legal again. You know, state by state,
So it's a slow process.
and only a few states really did it. You know, like on this day that were ready, like New York and whatever. So a lot of states, like Mississippi, was dry to 1966.
Holy cow!
33 years?
Damn.
Yeah, so
Damn.
That's crazy.
They were behind the curve.
They were slow. Well, they couldn't get right to it because they were doing a YSL trial down there, and so they were preoccupied.
That was Atlanta for just
Okay,
they don't
so-
want to get too far into Mississippi. But
Okay,
we need
so-
our listeners down there, cuz.
but I was reading today that people missed the speakeasies because it was fun, it was dangerous, and when it became legal again, people were like, oh, what's the big deal? I'll just grab a bottle of scotch and go home.
Interesting characteristic of the speakeasies: they usually had green doors.
Okay.
Yeah, they usually had green doors, and
Kind of like the upside down pineapple.
yeah. Producer John told us about the man with the green hat that serviced the Congress and Senate
Yeah.
back in the day.
Oh, okay.
yeah.
And you tied that together real good. I
like-
forgot
you
about
remember
the
that
old
story?
green hat.
Yeah,
I remember
yeah.
the story, but I
Yeah.
don't remember the green hat.
Yeah,
Well,
and then
now I do,
the
but-
doors were green, and some of the other interesting things were like cocktails were kind of born out of Prohibition because the booze during Prohibition was so poorly made it tasted like shit, and so they started to mix things with it to make it taste better, and that's where one of the famous cocktails in the day was called the Hanky Panky was invented.
Yeah, me too.
But they started mixing up those things. So.
Yeah.
The hanky is it still around? The hanky panky?
I don't know.
I
don't
think
know.
we need to revive the hanky panky.
We need to, let's.
There's
We
a
need
bunch
to
of
see what the
hanky-panky
ingredients of
on
a
it.
hanky panky are.
Yeah.
But so they used to mix it because it was poor quality stuff that they were getting.
There's bathtub gin and
Yeah, exactly.
stuff like that.
Yeah. But talking about diversity and things we could learn from our past. What were those places called? Black and Tans. No. Yeah, Black and Tans. I think that there were certain speakeasies that were called Black and Tans, but it was where blacks and whites would go there in a speakeasy. They would drink together, dance together, enjoy life together, and it was like there was no issues. There was none of this racist stuff at those. I think the word I'm looking for is Black and Tans.
Okay.
And that was a big thing during the Prohibition. So that's pretty cool.
I've pulled up the hanky panky.
Okay.
I've got,
Oh boy.
What do we got?
So the hanky panky is a cocktail made from gin, sweet vermouth, and Fernet Branca, or I guess you could call it Fernet.
Yeah.
Fernet Branca. This is a variation on the sweet martini, or Martinez, made distinctive by the Fernet Branca,
Wow.
a bitter Italian digestivo. So there you go, the Hanky Panky. We're getting one next year.
It was probably
or next
it was
week.
probably Kool-Aid and bathtub gin.
Bathtub,
back-
yeah, exactly. You know what also was ignited during Prohibition was tipping.
Really?
Tipping. And I'm not saying it never happened, but it became a thing during Prohibition because everybody was out of work. All the bartenders were technically out of work at every place but a speakeasy. And so tipping became, to help these employees, a big thing.
Well, and that kind of goes into recent history, like during COVID when all the bars were closed. That they did fundraisers and stuff to make money for the bartenders
Yeah.
and waitresses and
Exactly
and
right.
waiters.
Yeah.
to-
So that tipping
Yeah.
became a prominent thing back in the day of Prohibition.
Wow.
Danny really did his homework.
Yeah,
I did.
He
He
loves,
ran
his,
with
he loves
your-
his alcohol.
Yeah.
Overall, yeah, you mess with somebody's
He's
alcohol.
passionate about this.
Yeah. So,
I'm
but
with you.
overall, they
I'm
say
with you.
it totally failed in what it was trying to do. It was trying to. They thought the politicians were so corrupt they needed to take alcohol out of the equation. But when you look back and shine a light on Prohibition, it failed. Crime, corruption, and all those things skyrocketed. Tax revenue plummeted it. And for some reason, I can't explain, but public health went down.
I wonder if Fannie Willis came up with that idea.
I don't know.
Well, here's another interesting fact: if it wasn't for alcohol being legal again, none of us would be here.
Be a boring world, wouldn't it?
It would be.
Our parents would never had us.
So a toast to the end of Prohibition.
Yeah.
And you know what? Before we get off Prohibition, I heard a rumor that you have a newsroom.com that's relative to. Let's just stay on it.
Okay, let's just do the newsroom now. This is hot off the wire from 1919 when the 18th Amendment was passed.
The 18th Amendment.
Originally, Prohibition was brought about because
bullshit.
By women.
by women. It was the Anti-Saloon League, or it was one of the groups that really pushed it. But they said because of public health and all the, cars were starting to come around and people were having accidents, and apparently it just, they felt like the alcohol was ruining the country. So
Demon.
so 1919 it was passed. Like Dan said, you couldn't manufacture it or whatever. But by the end of the 1920s, the Great Depression hit after the stock market crash, and the other reason is it just didn't work. People still drank probably as much as they did before. But it was all, black market stuff, and it was, and it wasn't good quality, and people were getting sick from some of this lower quality alcohol. So after the stock market crashed, the government just said we need the tax revenue. We need to put those. It was like 1.5 million people that were put out of work, and we just need to get the money back in the system. So in February of 1933, Congress passed the 21st Amendment, which repealed the 18th Amendment, and but 3/4 of the states have to ratify it to make it, to pass an amendment. And this was the first amendment to ever be
Unanimous.
Repealed.
repealed. Yeah. So a lot of states were on board right away, but by December 5th, they needed 3 more states to get to 3/4, and Pennsylvania and Ohio assented, and they just needed 1 more. And do anybody know what state it was?
Open Missouri.
That held up or
Or
turned
this- that turned it around? That had the final
I'm with Tom.
Utah.
Utah.
Damn.
And Utah.
It's the driest place ever now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's still has like a lot of
Dry counties.
and laws, but they did it for the good of the country because of these other things we
Look
talked
at
about.
you.
Now
Utah.
there's still dry counties in this country.
Oh yeah, Kentucky, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
my brother went to Arkansas State, in Jonesboro, Arkansas. I don't know if it still is. It was dry. So how'd you go to a college that you couldn't go get beer? So they had to go for a travel to get anything.
Yeah, right. Or
That's
like
crazy.
when you went home for the holidays, you
Bring a
came
lot back.
Yeah. That's
Came back
crazy.
with a moving truck full of shit.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
But at precisely 3:32 Utah local time, they passed it. So
At 3:33, everybody was busted up.
yeah. So an hour after it Utah passed it, President Franklin Roosevelt came on, I guess, the radio and said, repealed. He goes, give me another.
That was so fucked up.
Give me another hanky panky. But he told people to drink responsibly, not abuse this return to individual freedom. So, only a handful of states were ready to go at the time, but eventually everybody came back on board.
Yeah, there was a thing that said over 51% of America was in favor of lifting a prohibition.
Only 51?
That
Yeah,
sounds
it was
That's
the
surprisingly
majority of
low.
the people were against the 18th Amendment.
Yeah,
I wonder how that would go right now. If you said we're going to take a vote as if we were in 1933, where do you think that percentage would be? It's got to be way more than 51%. Doesn't it?
Yeah,
Oh,
I'd
hell
say.
yeah.
I'd say so. That's
Well, Rick Ray just passed along this. Moore County, where Jack Daniel's distillery is located, is one of the state's many dry counties.
geez, where it's being distilled,
Yeah, so they can make it, but they can't.
Can't drink it.
they
sell
can't-
it there.
You
or-
can't drink it.
Sell it there.
Wow.
That's to this day. That's crazy. That's
Yeah.
that's insane. That's insane.
You know, you said that the one of the things where vehicles were coming around, and that was one of the things they were worried about, people drinking and driving this and that. Were Fords around yet? The Model T Ford, was that one of the first ones?
Yeah, Henry Ford he was kicking it back then.
And I think if the Schickers were around, they would have volunteered a vehicle to get alcohol.
Well,
from
they
one
would have
place
already
to another.
invented Uber. They would have been an Uber.
I think they would have.
Model Ts.
You know
back-
that van that comes up to your house?
the mobile
and-
service van.
Right, and it'll change your oil, do little minor changes.
Yeah.
They would have also had a van that was getting alcohol to the people that needed it. What do you think? I think they would have.
So you saying the Schickers were running booze back in the
Yeah,
day?
you
No,
said
I
it was-
just think they're all about people being happy.
Performing
And
public service.
that would have helped.
Yeah.
Did you agree? I mean, I think Johnny would agree with that.
We'll ask him.
I think he would have been down with the.
We'll sit down with Johnny
What did
when
they
he's
call that?
ending our
Bootlegger.
contract
I
because
think
you're
he-
calling him a bootlegger.
I think he would have been down for the.
At the same time, we're apologizing him for calling him a bootlegger. We'll see. We'll see what he says.
I think they would have had a bootleg vehicle.
You're calling Muni's Candyland, and you're calling our main sponsor a bootlegger. So
No,
let's
I'm
just
just
see how
saying
this
he
thing
would have been
works
down
out.
with it. He would have been down with it. You know, we got a new sponsor.
Okay,
You know, we got
go with it.
Police family that we're all a lot of our listeners will know is the Worm family, but the business is Prime Performance, and they have their website is primeperformancestl.com. They have a holistic approach to health. So it's owned by retired Captain Greg Worm.
Wow.
You know,
Okay, yeah.
his son Jim, and two U.S. Marshals, Dan Book and Tony Jones.
Oh,
so
Dan.
The Worm's father was my first sergeant.
was he?
Yeah, South Patrol. Yeah.
And he had a long time in K9,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Grandpa, Jim Worm, the father, and then they did not tell me to tell anybody this, but I'm just going to throw it out there. Bubba is not involved in this.
Really?
Well, actually, Jim Worm is one of my son Michael's good buddies. They were partners.
Okay.
They were in the little Steve Schwarb Squirrel Squad.
Yep.
And then Worm actually Jim went to SWAT, and then he left SWAT. And he actually left the department and went out on his own, and I guess this is what he's doing now, right?
Yes, and they have an office over at, or a location over in Illinois, but they're building a new one that should be open sometime next week in Fenton, 44 Fenton Plaza, and
I think
right by the Gravois Bluffs. But
we could all use it.
yeah, and their motto is rediscover your prime, and what they offer testosterone replacement therapy, hormone therapy, medical weight loss, peptide therapy, and treatment for vitamin deficiencies. And do all that, and you can rediscover
Your prime.
your prime.
All right.
Might
And
be-
then
get
welcome,
better
and then
pickleball.
we thank them for being sponsors, and look forward to working with them. And I told them it'd be nice to have the Marshalls, and I'm sure they all got stories. And I said, you got any stories? We're always looking for a
Come
good
on,
story.
bring them
right?
on.
Well, Dan Book worked for me. He was a city cop first.
Oh, was he?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes, he was in SWAT, and
Jim was in SWAT too. Jim Worm, correct?
yes.
Okay.
But Dan Book, the U.S. Marshal,
Mhm.
he played football at Quincy.
Okay.
So
And you played soccer there, right?
Yeah, so Quincy.
All right.
Quincy.
We
alumni.
got rolling so quick, but I see a couple SIBOs, extra large thin crusts out in the crowd tonight. Don't forget to swing by here and get one of those SIBOs or a daily lunch special, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share when you're watching it. And
That really helps us out. And I know we bag on this.
I
all
got
the
to
time.
say one more thing, though.
Yes.
I want to thank Corby Campbell Security for. I had a safe night at the night of the fight. So
And Corby and his peeps are going to protect.
That's what they do.
We know that the municipalities have some tough guys in it, but I think Corby can protect JJ.
well,
in that
they
situation.
didn't want to mess me with those big boys walking around with me.
yeah, I like that. Anybody have
How about that? 2 minutes of advertising.
except
fun.
our cigar guys?
The cigar. Yeah, we got to
Oh.
mention the Ponder family.
JJ, do you need help getting to Crestwood to get a cigar?
I might.
Yeah, you might have
Nice,
to. Yeah,
nice.
I wonder
I'm
if you
gonna
could
have
order
some-
a cigar through
No, I ain't driving through those munis. I'll just have somebody else
Hey,
go get them
good
for me.
idea.
Uber
JJ.
Eats. You just order your cigars through Uber Eats and have them go pick them up.
Oh, good
I
God.
can.
I don't know if you can
I'm
do
going to
that,
add
though.
one. I'm going to add one thing to my beef. And I heard this.
Well, let me get done with this. I'm going to kick it to you because I want to talk
Okay.
about your beef.
Oh.
But first, we're going to recognize the Ponder family for their advertiser.
We got no beef with them.
Yeah, we
No.
got no beef. They got some good cigars out there. The Riverman Cigar Company, 8984 Watson Road. Go in there and see Dan. Dan's got a wide array of cigars. Anything from your more reasonable cigars, $3 or so, right up into your cigars that cost hundreds.
Now, can you get Cubans in this country now?
I do not know that answer. We'll call Dan and we'll have the
If
answer
they
next
apply the proper channels through immigration, you can get Cubans.
You go down the border.
week. But
He made
JJ, I want to
cigars.
hear about your. I want to hear some beef information. What do you
No,
got?
I was talking to. He told me not to use his name, but we had just.
Who was it?
Well, no, we had a conversation, and he appreciated what I said about the police claiming to be city cops when they don't do any time. He goes, there is actually a kid, and I'm not going to say what department or what his name, obviously, but he got on the city police department, got out on the street for 3 months, and a muni picked him up after 3 months on our street.
Yeah.
You get paid to go through the police academy in the city, and now that you sign that contract. They
Always
used-
sign that, yeah.
They used to never go after it, but they are now.
Are they really?
Good, they should.
They,
They
should,
should.
absolutely.
I know when we came on, everybody was scared.
We
of
all
that
had to
thing.
sign it.
Right.
And it was 4 years, or you were
Or
going to
you're
pay
paying
back.
back the academy.
But
Yes,
can
you
you imagine?
should.
I don't want to rip on. I won't say the kid's name, and he probably don't listen to the podcast. But how do you go through our academy, get paid the entire time, do 3 months where you don't even know your ass from a hole in the ground, and then you leave to go to a muni?
It was his intention from the get-go.
100% it was.
Well,
And that's
and
where
then again,
and the guy did say that, he told me, he goes, man, you wouldn't. I better not get any further with this, but he might. But we were lots of
got
young.
another beef going.
No, not
Let's
a lot
get as
of
many beefs going
there's
as we
so
possibly
many,
can.
No, so many policemen are doing. They're like a training ground. We are the training ground for all
Right.
these munis, and they accept them so quickly. And I think it's wrong. I think it's rotten for these departments that steal our kids.
No, and I think
Yeah.
going after them though for
Young police.
their time
That's-
and making
yes.
them pay,
Absolutely.
that'll take away some of the incentive to go is money, right?
Right.
Well, if you can, again, you can probably make more money leaving than what the academy costs, but it's still it's going to be a significant hit if you have to pay that back, and maybe. And I'm with you to a degree that
Oh, you're 100% with me.
no,
Well, I'm 100% behind. It takes 6 months to train somebody, and that's a spot. If somebody's going to leave right away, that's a spot somebody could have
Yeah.
had. It's so hard to, when people
Right.
leave so quickly, and people retiring and going out on disability or whatever, or leaving for other jobs. It takes you 6 months in the academy, plus all the other, the preliminary stuff to replace that officer. that's why we can't catch up. And
Right.
it, you know,
Well, and again, that we're easy. We're an easy target because of it's not just money. There's many factors there, right? And if you're a municipality that doesn't have an academy and can not pay for somebody to go to the academy, and you just poach people that have gone through the academy, hire them, I mean, that saves them money, and then the city just keeps spinning wheels. And it's not like there's people lining up to get in the academy. And the
Right.
few that you do get in there get poached.
They used to.
Oh,
Yeah,
I couldn't. I mean,
yeah.
you couldn't get on back in our day.
Waiting list.
there was, you know, there was a retread class every few months back when we
Yeah.
came on.
I was Academy Class 87-1, and we were the first all-city class.
Okay.
So before my class, it was a county, city, and muni
Right,
academy,
anybody.
and
It was-
then we wouldn't have that problem. If you could use our academy, but you're paying for him, your officer in the academy.
Yeah, but it's a better deal for him now.
Oh no, I get it for them because we don't pursue it. But yeah, anyway, you got us all stressed out again.
No, I'm
JJ. So I think it's time to. Are you sitting on?
I got one.
You're sitting on a Zen.
You
I
know
am.
he's got a good one. You know
I don't think I got a good one, but the person that gave it, well, I'll just say it. Death does not separate. Death unites. Life separates.
Wow,
Deep.
deep.
You know who gave me that?
Who?
This long necked dude next to me.
No, I got it from Cece.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah, I thought I told you that.
Give
Yeah.
CC credit.
Yeah. So
Good.
yeah,
CC's having a show.
Yeah, she is.
if I was the old Dan, I would ask you to repeat it. And I
That
have to-
one would
I
be a
have
tough one to repeat.
I have to admit, my intentions
No,
were not good.
It's not hard. It's not hard to repeat, but I'm not going to do it. I got to.
But no, I like it.
I've been told I got to get away from that.
And I'm getting away from being mean because I used to ask you to repeat because I always knew that there's no way that. Oh, I mean, no.
There was one that you gave it a fist pump. You're like, yes.
Yes.
You know, was it? I think it was last week though when I did the one. I did miss a whole line. And
All right, JJ.
I watched
it
it
happens
back.
to everybody.
And you guys,
Everybody
I
misses
haven't
lines.
said, well,
I
haven't
don't
said
like
it,
this.
But I repeated it. But I nailed it
This
the
is
second time.
weird.
But the thing was, you guys said, no, it was good. It was. No, you didn't skip anything. I go. So I repeated it. I did it the correct way the second time. But
Hey, Tom, I'm getting kind of uncomfortable with Dan chumming up to JJ like this.
me too.
So I got a little quick story today.
Go
I
ahead.
went into
Go ahead.
Jimmy John's,
Yeah.
sandwich place.
Yeah.
And Freaky Fast, right?
Yep.
But they got interesting stuff on the wall that, if you have to wait, you can go read it. And
Yep.
Like graffiti.
Right. Nah, not graffiti, but signs. And they have this one that I was trying to read it, but I got my sandwich right away, so I had to take a picture of it. So I got the picture. and it's 16 things that that it took for me. What's it? Okay, 16 things that it took me over 50 years to learn. And this was written by a guy by the name of Dave Barry on his 50th birthday. I'm not going to go through all of them. But the one that made me think of you right away,
Think of who? Me or JJ?
you.
Oh.
And it is there is a very thin line between a hobby and mental illness. Your pickleball career came to mind, and I wanted to know next week when ask that to Denise where she thinks she's fit. Is a hobby or a mental illness? Yes.
Wow.
The other one and you've heard me say this a couple times about my birthday thing.
Yeah. Hatred for birthdays.
Not hatred, but
Just wishing other
It's
men
just
Producer
happy
John
birthday.
wished me happy birthday. He texted me and said happy
could
birthday.
go overboard with Pete. It said, there comes a time when you should stop expecting other people to make a big deal about your birthday. That time is age 11.
I like
Holy
that.
cow.
Yep.
What about the big 13? That's all you said. Or
Wow.
no. When you're first a teenager, that's a big one. The guy's wrong. He should have said 13.
Okay.
So here's one that I think people will like is zone this in a little bit. It is the final thought of the day. He said, men are like fine wine. They start out as grapes, and it's up to the women to stomp the shit out of them until they turn into something acceptable to have dinner with. What do you think?
I like it.
Wow,
I
Go
don't
give me some
endorse
Jimmy
that.
John's.
I like it.
Hey,
And sandwich was
Hey,
good too.
Danny, why
Got
are
to
your
number
nuts hanging
9.
so low today?
Say it again.
Your nuts are hanging kind of low today.
Oh yeah,
These
I
nuts.
got it. We got a gift.
These nuts.
A fireman, right?
They're hanging a little low, yeah.
They are. Well, gravity never sleeps.
Balls.
Old,
But,
old man balls.
Yeah, these are. Somebody brought this a Christmas ornament. D's nuts.
These nuts.
That is
These nuts.
awesome.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yep. Yeah, that defund the police movement didn't go over too well recently, but anyway, hey, unless anybody has anything else, I have some very interesting fact
Okay.
and some research.
Would this be considered some of your useless information?
It would, but I didn't want to say that because every time we say it, JJ leaves, and I miss JJ when he leaves.
I know you do. What do you got, Danny?
Can you sit through just one?
I will.
It's research.
You know what's funny is I almost got up.
I was anticipating.
I was going to use the restroom real quick, but I'm going to stick around.
There's been some research lately that has discovered something that I guarantee people have thought about, that when a deaf person is sleeping and dreaming, they sign language their dreams.
Shut up. It
Okay.
doesn't make sense.
Okay, and so they studied a 71-year-old guy, and they did a sleep monitor on him, and he started to dream, and he started to sign it, and they got a good idea what he was dreaming.
Was he dreaming about?
Well, I didn't know. I don't read sign language, but they did. But they did. And
Get the fuck out of here.
no.
This is one dude. You're telling me
No,
all
no,
blind
they
people-
said-
It's like talking in your sleep.
It's very common. It's like talking in their sleep, but they
it's
sign
common.
it.
Okay. I'm just
It's common. Okay. That could have been a mess
know
when
about
you.
that.
Why a lot of
know about that.
deaf people
What if-
get divorced because they their wife can tell what they're dreaming about.
Did you just come up? Did you just come up with that? Who the hell is she?
It's just logic.
Oh, shit.
What are you talking about? Oh yeah,
That was pretty good.
But-
Man, that's quick. That was pretty
that was
quick.
pretty good. Can you believe that?
No, I think it's crazy. So if you could hear it one time and go deaf, would you still?
No, I think it's
I think it's
the
your-
hearing impaired that were life, but
Deaf-
I don't know the
deaf
answer to
from the
that. But
very
I'm
beginning.
thinking. But they did, a 71-year-old started to do on a sleep study, started to dream and started to sign it, and they figured it on out.
there had to be somebody
He was having an affair.
He confessed.
That son of a bitch.
Unintentionally confessed.
That's probably how they found out. 'Cause he recently got divorced. And the reason for divorce was he signed his dreams.
Oh man,
That was a good one, producer John.
Yeah,
That
that was
was
very
quick,
good.
dude.
So, what do we have coming up, Tommy? We have McClellan now.
McClellan, and then next week we'll have Jerry Layshak, and we had the pleasure of interviewing Jerry tonight. We already did, Bill, as I told you on Monday, and that story is pretty wild too. The murder story out in Texas that Jerry helped out solve. We'll just put it that way. And
Yep.
This is Netflix.
JJ thinks it ought to be on Netflix.
I think
so,
it'd be great Netflix.
you guys want another one of these?
yeah, give us one more before you tell us about our communities.
Let me see what
One more.
Let me see what we got.
You gonna bring up Federal Friday?
Here's one. Oh yeah, I'll talk about that here in a minute too. The one thing that unites all human beings, regardless of age, gender, religion, economic status, or ethnic background, is that deep down inside, we all believe that we are above average drivers. We know that ain't true.
That ain't true.
That ain't true. And then, real quick, is Federal Friday will be coming out this Friday.
Uh-huh.
And we talked again. We had Joe Cronin and Jack Riley on, and I think John will agree with me. They had some very good insight on what's about to happen with the federal government, and what's going on, and why some of these picks are being made, and where this is going, and it was
Jack and Joe have a lot of personal knowledge, and a lot of the people who are up for cabinet positions, they know these people. They've worked with them. They've met them, or they know them by reputation. From people who do work with them. But they have some really good insight into why President-elect Trump has picked some of these cabinet
Interesting.
positions. Yeah, it is. It's very interesting.
That's
we wish
interesting.
him the best of luck, and You never know. We might be in the Beltway ourselves having a show.
There we
You
go.
never
Did he
know.
say we could do a show from up in his?
He did. He says
DC?
he's got a beautiful window in his office because he knows where that office is, obviously, from being there before. But yeah, we asked
Oh, we
him.
wish him luck for that.
Absolutely, he'd be a great pick. And
He would be a great
even
pick.
if not, it's an honor just to be considered.
Yeah, I think they're going to lean on Jack for some advice.
some
For the
advice.
transition.
Yep,
Yep.
yeah, during the transition, regardless.
Very interesting. All right, what about our communities?
Communities are much safer. Communities that support law enforcement are much safer places to live. And everybody knows that.
True. Peace.
Peace.
Okay, welcome back to the brighter side of blue. I'm Danny,
I'm Tommy.
I'm JJ.
and we have Bill McClellan here. Yes, nice. We are honored to have columnist Bill McClellan with us today.
Legendary.
A St. Louis legend. We've had a lot of police legends, and now we have our first civilian legend on the show. Hey, where's your hoodie?
Where is my hoodie? Well, this is like a hostage video.
Hey, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you.
So, hey, before we get going, I know you've been pretty open to all your followers and the community about your health battles. And where you at now? How you feeling now?
Well, I feel great. I think everything is looking good. And I've now, in my one-man campaign to bankrupt Medicare, I'm having a knee replacement.
Good
All
luck.
right.
Keep
Thanks.
going, baby.
You'll bounce back from that strong. And then, but I also want to. I have a little complaint with you, Bill.
Sure.
I'm trying to get you on the pickleball court, and I can't get you off the tennis court. And you're friends with Colonel Leshock. I think you should both come over to the pickleball court.
Well, I think the reason I'm getting the knee replacement is because of Colonel Leshock. You know, Jerry and I are partners, and every ball that's hit, I go, "You got that one, Jerry." and I guard my little square meter, and Leshock has to run all over the court. So I think if it weren't for Medicare, Leshock I'd probably be paying for half of this knee replacement.
So, hey, Bill, I heard a rumor that because you used to beat him so bad in tennis, he quit to become a pickleball player.
Well, I think there is some truth to that, JJ.
I was the worst tennis player on the group.
Oh, I don't believe it.
Major Dace, Colonel Leshock, and Bill, and then me. And I have to say, so there might be some truth to that, JJ.
Well, you
actually.
hit the ball hard. I mean, I always thought Danny Howitzer. I mean, you smacked the ball, as does Sean.
But like you said, accuracy is not our best attribute.
Well, I just kind of try to push it back.
Yeah. Well, we're going to get you on the pickleball court, I
Okay.
promise. Hey, Bill, thanks for coming on the brighter side of the blue. So I have a reason that I want to tell you our mission statement and kind of how we got started. And then I want to ask your reaction to that.
Sure.
So we start the brighter side of blue. Producer John's behind the camera now, controlling things there, but usually he's out here with us. So the four of us for, 25 to 30 years have been friends, and our night out is Thursday nights. And we'd sit around on Thursday nights and have a beer or two, and we'd tell police stories, and we'd have these great stories of what our coppers have done during the day and how they're helping the community, this and that. And we decided that there needs to be a platform that combats the negative perception of police work and that gets positive stories out there, humanizes the police, and lets the public know that, hey, every profession has a bad apple or two, and we don't appreciate those people either. So we want to take the time and get a platform out there that talks about the great things that police do. So my question to you is, do you see a need for that? Do you think our mission's on point?
Oh, no, I think your mission's on point. There's definitely a need for it. You know, coming at it from a newspaper reporter's point of view, I think a big part of the problem is we young reporters don't have the kind of access that I used to have. I mean, hanging around with the cops and going out to dinner and being at the scenes and talking to people. Now you have a little army of public relations people who stand between the press and the police, and there isn't that camaraderie and trust. I mean, cops and reporters have a lot in common. You know, information is the coin of the realm, and the old relationships are not there anymore. When a reporter has to talk to a PR person, who then has to talk to the officer, and the patrolmen never get their names in the paper anymore. And like in the old days when I was Night City police reporter, the detectives and the sergeants in homicide and bomb and arson, they were kind of well-known characters. They were in the paper all the time. And I thought that people like that. I mean, people like to read about what their neighbors are up to, and the stories that are generated that way are about the pressures on the cops and what they have to do and the successes. Nowadays, there's just a public relations release on it.
Boy, that is a great perspective. That is a great perspective, and it's so true. I look back to the Michael Brown thing, and I just wonder if the people in the community and the media had more active access to information immediately, if that would have been mitigated.
Oh, I think you're right, Danny. I think that, if the first lieutenant on the scene or the sergeant on the scene would have said, here's what we know. And, there's nothing wrong with doing that. The idea that, well, you have to wait for the chief to get out there. I mean, back, I was night police reporter like in 81 and 82, 83. And, the chiefs didn't go to crime scenes. I mean, the first time I met the chief when I was night police reporter was Chief Camp. And I remember he came down to the press room one evening and said, hey, I'd like to go to lunch with you. So I said, sure. So we went to lunch, and we went to O.T. Hodges, the chili parlor. And, Tamale Inn was like $2.30 or something. So I thought, well, I'll buy this. So I said, Chief, let me get this. And Cam said, no, I got this. And we walked up to the cash register, and, we had the bill, and the Chief Camp laid down the bill and then put out his badge. And young clerk at the cash register, he said, that'll be $5.70. And Cam flashed his badge, and the clerk was frightened and said, that'll be $5.70, officer. And Camp said, I'm the chief. And fortunately, the manager saw what was coming and came running over and said, Chief, this is on the house, of course. And Chief put that. And, when I tell that story to young reporters, they're a little bit askance at well, did you write about anything? No, that's just the way life was.
Right.
And, these days, a chief would never try to strong-arm a kid into a free meal, especially in front of a reporter.
Right, think about that.
Yeah, in those days, it was just sort of that was life. And the relationships were just so much different, and it lended itself to more positive stories, Dan.
Yeah, that's
Well,
amazing.
when you started,
Yeah.
so you started in 1980 as a night cop reporter,
Night
right?
cop reporter, right.
And did you have an office in the building?
Yeah, yes, I did. We had a little press office right out of the movies, with a couch that had the springs showing, and we had the squawk boxes, the police radios there, and there were the Globe Democrat night police reporter was Rich Curry, and he could have shut me out entirely, really, because the police liked the Globe Democrat. They didn't like the Post-Dispatch, and it would have been easy for Rich to shut me out, but Rich had been in the Marine Corps, and I had been in the Marine Corps, so there was a little bit of that going on, and Rich was just a nice guy and introduced me around, and so it was Rich and I, and then the other reporter who didn't use the press room at all was Ben Thomas of the Evening World.
Evening World.
And if the police liked the Globe Democrat, which they did, they loved the Evening World.
Oh, yeah.
For a couple of reasons. First of all, Ben Thomas gave everybody nicknames.
The nickname.
John Roussan was Hollywood. Leshock was the Huntsman.
Yeah.
Steve Jacobs Meyer was the Smasher. Dan Nichols was Dapper Dan.
Yeah.
And plus, the Evening World reached an audience that the police wanted to reach.
Correct.
And Ben would do little things like, who shot the lovely Miss Lizzie? And people would call in.
Wife beaters and husband mistreaters.
Oh my God, wife beaters and girlfriend mistreaters. And then there was a cartoon that went with it of a cowering woman, and she'd say, "Honey, don't," and the man says, "Be good and I won't." I mean, you're not now.
Try that now.
That kind of thing wouldn't fly today.
No.
But Ben Thomas, and sometimes reporters from out of town would come in and they would see the Evening World and they would go, "Is this thing for real?" And they would call Ben, and Ben would often, I was like his press agent, he'd say, "Talk to Bill McClellan of the Post." And I'd say, "Well, Ben is my competition, but he beats me most of the time because I have to use the word allegedly all the time." Johnny allegedly had an argument with Frankie, and Frankie allegedly, and Ben just writes a blues song. And he would often quote homicide victims, "Holy Moses, get the roses." And so Ben was always up there too. So you had, you go on the fourth floor, and like I'd make my rounds, stop in at Bominarsh and see, Steve Sirocco and
Just walking freely.
Yeah, and Tommy Weiber, and then go into homicide, and there'd be, Roussan and Jacobs Meyer, Burgoon, and friends with everybody. And in sex crimes, there's Warren Johnson and Mike Dunn, and I'm leaving tons of names out, but it was just everybody had a relationship, and it made things go smoother, and there were a lot more positive stories about police and police procedures than there are now.
Yeah, and you just walked freely through headquarters, walking in and
Oh, well, I had my little blue ID,
Yep.
and that allowed me, the press room was on the first floor, and I just go to the elevators up to the fourth floor where the Bureau of Investigation was, and, and before long, everybody.
Yeah.
And, there are reporters now who would say that maybe that's too cozy of a relationship.
Right.
Because things would come up like Chief Camp, strong arming his way to lunch.
Oh, yeah.
And things would come up that, somebody would say, "Hey, don't use this," or something.
Right.
Because, with two papers, we were always trying to have more than the other paper. Like, "Hey, strangled with the telephone cord," or, whatever it was.
We got information.
Yeah. And, and it was just a happier time for
So
reporters.
can you remember any time, because you had such access, unbelievable access, and you had great relationships with these people, can you remember any time where you had to write a tough story that involves officers that you saw regularly?
Sure. That certainly happened. That every now and then, things would diverge.
Yeah.
And Joe Ferrario was a friend of mine.
Okay.
And Joe was involved in a shooting where he was going down the street and shooting at a person and hit an innocent bystander.
On the porch, right?
Yeah, Marilyn Banks on the porch. And there had been some internal stuff with Joe before. And I wrote a story and used that, and there were people who said to me, "Geez, why do you have to use that?" And I said, "Well, it really is my job."
Right.
And so there would be times like that, sure.
With that, what you just answered, did you see it changing at some point in when it's not as cozy as it used to be? Did it start to fade at a certain time?
Or were you already a columnist?
Yeah. Well, by then I was a columnist,
Okay.
but I still had great access and could talk to people. But things were shaking up and starting to change. The world was changing, and on my side of the ledger, there were reporters who thought, that some of these police reporters are too cozy with the cops.
Right.
And on the police department side, there were people who thought, that, well, we have a message that we want to portray and we want to control it more. And I remember Chief Ron Henderson was the first chief I can remember who went to homicide scenes. And he would be the person that the TV people would talk to.
Right.
And, until then, it would have been the sergeant sometimes just the detectives who would go on. So everything started to change, and then the internet and websites and stuff like that. All of a sudden, people felt, and not just in the police department, the circuit attorney's office was the same way. I mean, the old access where you could wander in and talk to prosecutors, suddenly you had to go through PR people, and then they wanted to put the message out themselves and control the message. So,
were you too cozy with the officers, or did you become friends with any of these?
oh, I became good friends with a number of them.
Okay.
And, I can remember, and it was a blast. Like, I'd go out as night police reporting, 8 or 9 o'clock. We'd decide to go out to dinner.
Okay.
And we'd go to some little chop suey joint.
Oh, Lucky's?
Well, I don't know. Just little chop suey joint on the north side. And I go, well, what's good here? And Roussan would say, get the shrimp fried rice. And I'd go, why would I do that? And he'd go, because nothing else looks like shrimp. I mean, there were just all sorts of insights and fun. And I still see some of the fellas, like, Jerry Layshawk and Sean Dace, I play tennis with. But for a long time, we had a lunch group, George Sieper, who's now in his 90s, and I would say, I hope you're listening, George, but he's not. His hearing is worse than mine. But if your daughters are watching, hello to George. But so it would be George and Joe Burgoon, Mike McCraw, sometimes Bob Zambo, John Podolak, Dan Looney, just a bunch of guys from the old days would go out and have lunch and tell stories, and George's health has deteriorated, so we've kind of stopped doing that.
Now, who came after you on the night cop reporter? Who took your spot?
Well,
when you went down?
I'm not sure. I know that one fellow who came after me got in some trouble. The Post-Dispatch editors would sometimes want us to run license plate numbers. Hey, who's this? And, and I would always pretend to go along with it and say, I'll find out. And then I wouldn't do anything. And if they asked, I'd say, oh, well, the guy I know wasn't on the computer last night or something. But the reporter who followed me would say, well, I can't do that. They can't give me that. That's illegal.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of getting at.
Yeah, and so it was easier just to go along, and say, hey, I'll see if I can get it, and then not even try.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of getting at, because whoever followed you, there's no way they had all this access and these relationships, and I could just see them calling
Trust.
you, Bill, can you help me out? I
Right.
can't get into anything.
Trust
over
becomes
here.
an issue.
Yeah,
with
trust.
exchange,
Yeah. I mean, when you know somebody, it's a lot easier. And if you of course the person who everybody trusted was Bill Bryan.
Yes.
I mean, Bill Bryan, and he knew everybody because he had been working at the police department for years and years and years, and everybody trusted Bill that they could tell him stuff, and he wouldn't abuse it. I mean, he
There's
wouldn't.
a story to tell, but you don't go too far and you don't go too
Right. He
too-
wouldn't cover anything up, but he wouldn't try to sensationalize stuff.
Right.
That's what I was getting at.
And so Bill was, the most respected reporter in town by far.
Have you ever got into a situation where it was really stressful for you to maintain the confidentiality of a source, of a police source? Like pressure was on you to divulge who the hell told you something, and you were uncomfortable?
Well, I can't remember, Dan. I'm sure.
Are you protecting them right now?
No. In addition to bad
Put it on the
hearing,
dead guy.
my memory's not too good.
All right.
But no, I can't remember any situation that was really on the edge for me about that.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Wow.
Bill, you've written several books. I think 9 books.
Well, no, I think 3 or 4 books of columns, and then 1 true crime book.
Gently
But
down
you
the
had
stream.
that. What I was going to get at is a true crime book was about the post murders,
Yes, it was.
and your relationship. When did you decide this could be a good book? And then did your relationships over the years help you get that whole book together?
Well, yeah. The way it came about was I was in New York to do the Geraldo show, back when Geraldo was a real junk show.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, he later became some semblance of, a journalist. But at the time, it was just a completely trash show. And
What do you have you on for?
And they were doing romances that didn't work out. And so it was Roxanne Pulitzer in Florida, and she'd written a book called Prize Pulitzer, and she and Peter, her husband, did crazy things. And then Jerry Lee Lewis's first wife, who wrote a book called Great Balls of Fire. And then Angela Whitson from St. Louis, who had a child out of wedlock with Billy Bush. And then Billy wanted the kids, wanted his daughter, so he took the daughter and her stepbrother and took them to Grant's farm, and the police wouldn't do anything, so Angela called me, and I wrote a column about it, and the Geraldo people talked to Angela and didn't think she was very believable. So they wanted someone to bolster her credibility. So they thought a reporter from the Post-Dispatch. So they flew me there, and they would ask Angela a question, and then they'd go, Bill McClellan, the Post-Dispatch, is that true? And I would say, yes.
Use a lie detector test.
And so while I was there, a editor from some publishing company called me and said, do you want to ghostwrite a book for Angela? This could be as big as Great Balls of Fire. And I said, no, I don't. And I said, and to tell you the truth, I don't read that sort of stuff. And I said, and I didn't want to look like I'm staying at home reading Ulysses or something. So I said, I read true crime books. And she said, well, do you have any good true crime things? And I said, well, actually, we did have a case recently that was very good. And she said, do you have an agent? And I said, no, but Jimmy Stein from William Morris called me. She said, I know Jimmy, let's do this. So I came home and I said to my wife, I said, Mary, you won't believe this, but I'm going to do a true crime book. And I called Stein. Oh, thank you. I called Jimmy Stein at William Morris and said, what do I have to do? I mean, do I just sign a contract? He said, no, you have to write like a proposal. He said, so write something, because this will be what we sell it with, a 60-page proposal of what you think the book will be. So I went to the basement, and over a couple of weeks, I wrote 65 pages and sent it to Stein, and he took it to that publisher, and she said no. And I felt like a high school kid who somebody comes up to you and says, hey, Susie wants to go to the prom with you. And you go, Susie does? Wow. And then you call Susie, and she says, no. So I thought, well, there goes a couple of weeks and nights. And he said, no, I can sell this. And he did. So Penguin bought it. So that's how that came about. And as far as past relationships, Mike McCraw was a lead detective in it. Jacobsmeyer was a lead detective in it. And the amazing George Holliker, if you guys remember. Remember George. I
Good
mean,
friends with producer John.
Okay,
great
yeah.
friends with his dad.
Right. Oh, well, George was just, you couldn't invent George Holliker. I mean, he was tough, and he had told me early on, I was writing columns about the case, and George said, I knew Post did it from the first time I saw him. And I said, how'd you know that? And he said, little feet. Just like some guys say beady eyes, Holliker said little feet. So I said, okay. So
That was his MO. If you had little feet, you were going to bad dude.
Right. A bad guy.
But just to let our listeners know, the Post murders it happened down at the Union Station.
Yes.
Regency.
Ed Post was a real estate guy from New Orleans, and he and his wife Julie came in. They were staying at the Omni Hotel at Union Station, and Julie drowned in the hotel bathtub. And it initially went down as an accidental death. And there was a little item in the paper the next day. And George Holliker saw it and said, a 37-year-old woman drowns in a bathtub? And Timmy Kalin was the officer who had done the report. And so Holliker called Tim and said, "Hey, Caitlin, how long? What happened?" And he said, "Well, the guy told me that he drew his wife's bath, and then went on a jog, and he came back, and his wife was dead. Must have slipped and fallen in getting out of the tub." And Holliker said, "How long were they married?" And Tim said, "I think 20 years." And Holliker said, "No man who's been married 20 years draws his wife's bath." he said he did it.
Clue number one.
Yeah, so Holliker and Jacobsmeyer went down to New Orleans right away, and they got there on the day of Julie Post's funeral and knocked on the door, and I don't know which one, flashed the badge and said, "We're homicide detectives from St. Louis." And Post hugged them. And, if there's two unhuggable guys, it was George Holliker and Steve Jacobsmeyer.
They give off no sense of hug me.
So that also reinforced George Holliker's idea that he did it. And now he's trying to, blow smoke at us. He did it. And then the Post had written some columns, and the Post decided we'd have a big feature story about the case because it was filled with interesting twists. And John McGuire, a good friend of mine, was assigned the job, and I said, "Well, I can set you up with all the people." And I said to George Holliker, I said, "Hey, George, now when you talk to this reporter, if you tell him that you knew he was guilty because he had little feet, that's going in the paper. You're not talking to me over a glass over a drink here." Yeah. And so he said, "Well, why wouldn't I tell him?" And he did. He told McGuire, "I knew he was guilty when I saw his little feet." So yeah.
Everybody's got one of those too. Every officer's got a little thing.
Oh, well, Holliker was like Jack Patty in the county. Do you guys remember him? Yeah. Toughest guy ever. Yeah, so, my connections really helped with that book.
And the articles that you wrote going up to that, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, because I already kind of knew everybody. And when I went down to New Orleans to talk to the real estate people who worked with Julie and Ed, I took McGuire with me because John could just disarm people. There was no guile to John. Everybody trusted him immediately. And, people don't always trust me. And so I thought, I'll just have John deal with some of these real estate women. And when we got down there, I had made an appointment to see one, but she had been very balky about it. And I said, "John, when we go into the real estate office and we ask for this person, don't let on it, what we're here or what we're about, who we are." And so we walked in, and I forget the woman's name. I said, "I'd like to see, Margaret Smith." And the receptionist said, "Are you the guys from St. Louis doing a book?" And everybody came up to talk to us. They couldn't say enough bad things about Ed. So,
Everybody wanted to be a snitch, huh?
oh, my gosh, right.
But I think one of the things over the years that I found about your articles, and I've heard you say this before, is that you didn't write like opinion pieces so much as you did stories. And you were a great storyteller because you could get the story within your articles. Was that was intentional?
Well, it's really who I am. I'm much more of a storyteller than I am an opinion person.
Yeah.
And like there's times when, when I would write 4 columns a week. So there's times when I would be writing about my opinion, and now I just write 1 column a week, and I'm lazy enough that sometimes I just write about something that happened to me. But when I was doing 4 columns a week and at the top of my game, I considered myself just a storyteller. It's why I liked the cops so much, and it's why I like going to court, because I knew that if I went to court, I'd get something. I mean, you could just sit there and whatever happened, would be
Right.
could be a story.
Right.
And especially my friends in the department, when something would be going on, some case, they go, you call me and go, "Hey, McClellan, you're going to like this." Yeah. And sometimes judges or lawyers would call the same way. And that made it much easier because, when the public would call and they'd say, Mr. McClellan, I've got a good story here about my disabled nephew getting thrown out of his apartment. And I go, good. But then I look into it, the disability was crack cocaine. And he hadn't paid his rent in 6 months. Whereas, like, if somebody who knew me, somebody in the system would call and say, hey, I think you're going to like this, then it generally worked out.
Did you have the same access at the prosecutor's office?
I did, and the time frame was roughly similar.
Yeah.
I could walk in and I knew the
George Peach.
secretaries, and so I go, hi, here to see, Nels Moss, Dwight Warren.
Yeah.
And he go, I think he's out. I go, I'll just see who's back there. Okay. and wander back and, chat with people, what's coming up. And now, of course, that's even more tightly, maybe even more tightly controlled in the police department.
Well,
Yeah, I'd
the
say.
whole thing's a bygone era. That doesn't happen anymore. Your era is gone. Unfortunately, it's gone.
Oh, yeah. My year is gone. I mean, it's like the end of Middle Earth. I mean,
Well, I can tell
elves and
you.
the
I can tell you
dwarves.
one thing. My mother would call, even up to the day before she died a few years ago. But when I was a young kid, she would always call me and say, "Hey, you got to read Bill McClellan's article.
Oh, yeah.
You got to read Bill
I
McClellan's
got that
article."
all the time.
I mean that. I can't tell you how much I like to hear something like that.
yeah.
But it was great, and I did consider myself a storyteller. I mean, that's exactly.
You were
right.
really good at it, and one of the relationships that over the years that I found interesting was your relationship with Guzzy, and you would have him on the on your TV show,
Donnybrook?
Oh, yeah,
Donnybrook.
right. Oh, yeah, Mike Guzzy was a good friend.
Was he crabby?
And, well, he could
Good
be.
guy.
He could be. And, and he was also such a fine writer.
He was.
Oh, yeah.
He was.
When, I don't know if you guys saw that TV series, The Wire.
Oh,
yeah.
one of the best shows
I
there.
thought The Wire was just the greatest thing ever. And there was a Baltimore reporter and I think a cop and who did it. And I remember thinking, Guzzy and I could have done that.
Absolutely.
And
Get some of the inner secrets out, just to
Well, that's-
slide them on out.
Right.
That show is the most.
One-
I'm sorry. That show was the most accurate police shows in history, and it kind of mirrored the city of St. Louis,
Yeah.
size-wise, and everything. It was.
I know, JJ. That's like say I saw it and I thought, wow, this is real life. And another Guzzy story that I just thought was so great about the St. Louis Police Department was, Jim Hackett, who was the chief of detectives then,
Right.
and kind of the last of the fedora guys.
Yeah.
Right.
Back in the day when guys wore fedoras and there was no DNA and there was a lot of hunch work.
Yeah.
Rip Riley, Herb Riley.
Yeah.
He always had a hunch who did it. and sometimes that didn't work out. But Hackett, I remember it was the young girl who was kidnapped in St. Anne and found in the Bush Wildlife Center.
Not Brooks. Not.
No.
She ain't been found.
Well, at any rate, right after she was found, you're thinking of Dina John Brooks from Fredtown. No.
Yeah.
Right, Angie Hausman.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
Okay.
right after
Okay.
Angie Hausman was found, another young girl was found in the city. And I remember Hackett, I was out there, after they found the body, and Hackett with his fedora on said to me, we got ourselves a serial killer. And then somebody else, maybe somebody more like Burgoon, a more thoughtful guy, maybe, came up and said, you better not use that. I don't see any.
Let's not go there yet.
I don't see any similarities. But Guzzy told me that when he was doing some secondary work as a PI and working for a divorce attorney, well-known guy, and he had a case, the divorce case with some prominent man, and Guzzy, doing work for the prominent man's lawyer, found out something that helped them. And the prominent man said to Guzzy, I know people, what do you want? And, what can I do for you? And Guzzy was a district detective at the time. And Guzzy said, well, I'd like to go downtown. I'd like to be in either homicide or intelligence. And the guy said, it'll be done. And sure enough, a few days later, Guzzy gets a call from Hackett, and Hackett says, I want you to come downtown. I need to talk to you. He comes down and says, I've had my eye on you for a while. I think you're doing really good. I think you need to come downtown. I think homicide. And Guzzy said, thanks, thanks, Chief. I won't let you down.
Yeah.
And Guzzy says, okay. And as Guzzy's getting at the door ready to go, Hackett said, hey, how do you know? There was a lot of that in the police department.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
Well, that kind of leads me to a question that's kind of on the table now, because you've worked through both scenarios. State control with the police commissioners as opposed to local control.
Well,
Opinion.
My opinion is I go along with what the police association says, and they seem to favor state control.
Yeah.
And in fact, the Ethical Society of Police, the black officers, also favor state control. So I think if that's what the cops want, that's probably what we should do. And in the old days when there were police commissioners, in some ways it seemed kind of silly, but in other ways, at least there was somebody there.
Yeah.
And like right now, I think they say they have a police board, but I don't think they really have a functioning police board. And so you're really dependent on the city leaders, and I can understand why a lot of people are not keen on working for Tashara Jones or Megan Green.
We support the state control.
No comment.
Well, and I think it's one of those things. Just
No
real
comment
quick
from the
about
active
the
guy.
state. What's that?
I got none on that opinion.
JJ gave us a no comment because he's still
Yeah,
active.
I get it. I get it.
we
I
get
get
you.
it. But one of the things is morale, right? And all the little things add up in the long run. I know pay is big. I know everybody wants, but just just to have state control for the morale of people that want to come on, and the people that are on. I think that's a change right
I
away.
mean, there was the ACE system they used to
Oh,
call it.
yeah.
Where it was really who you knew, and the commissioner
100%.
could help guys. I remember when, you guys remember John Schickendance?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, Schick was a good friend of mine, and he got promoted to sergeant. I wrote a column about no steam Schick.
I remember that guy.
And he told me that when he was up there, receiving his promotion, I think it was Hackett said, no steam. But, so there was favoritism, but there's always favoritism.
Yeah.
So,
in just about every business.
yeah. Right.
I mean,
If your dad runs a business, there's a good chance that you're going to move up in a business.
Absolutely.
So
the way life is.
I don't know if you knew this, but our producer, retired Sergeant John Frank, his dad was Commissioner Colonel John Frank.
Oh,
that was held hostage.
I knew that because Tony Dinelli
Yes.
was and is a friend of mine.
Yeah.
And on the day that he kidnapped on the day he held your dad hostage.
Yes.
He wanted to talk to, be live on radio or TV. And the people from Quantico who were assisting the St. Louis police in the hostage situation said you can't let him be live on anything because he'll probably kill himself.
Oh.
And so don't do this. So Nelly compromised and said that he would talk to me because we were friends and I had covered the trial. So I went up there, to talk to Tony. He had already released your father, John, and we met in a little room with, the police around. And it was a tragedy because I covered the trial and I didn't think Tony really did anything.
Right.
I think that, it was, I thought, Don, not Clayton, but
Anton.
Yeah.
Don Anton, and I thought the city treasurer, Barra, kind of led Tony on, and Tony was
Yes.
just a guy with an office in his squad car. And really, as I remember, what Anton did was churn the accounts so much. He wasn't literally stealing money. He was just making all sorts of trades because he got commissions on it. And Dinelli didn't know anything about that.
Right.
And everybody pled guilty except Tony. And Tom Dittmeyer, who I admire a great deal, he was the prosecutor, and it was Dittmeyer in federal court against Dinelli. And I thought that the jury just, heard all these terrible things that had been done to the pension fund, and there's one defendant,
Right.
and so they convicted Tony.
Yeah.
So I'm still friends with Tony, and I think he got a raw deal. So
We did a podcast on that, and I think there was a lot of desperation in there. He really truly believed he was innocent, and then the desperation set in.
Absolutely. And matter of fact, I think that I wrote something about Dinelli rode the Whiskey River into the 1010 building, I think it was.
Yeah.
When I saw him, which was like the next day or something, on a Sunday, you could tell that he had been drinking. I mean, he had sobered up, the way you get, with no sleep. And But he was not in his right mind.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Well, no, he brought booze in with him, right, in his backpack.
Pardon me?
Yeah.
He brought booze in with him when he walked in
Did
the
he?
office. He had
Okay,
booze
yeah,
with
but
him.
I remember something about whiskey.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Bill, you've spent, 45 years of your life looking under the hood of St. Louis, and you made a conscious decision to move here from Arizona, right?
Yes.
With your wife, Mary. You know all the little secrets. You've seen where we've come from, where we are today. Would you do it all again?
Oh yeah, but I didn't make such a conscious decision to come here. What happened was my girlfriend was a dental hygienist, and I was a reporter in Phoenix, and then one day. She said, why am I the hygienist and he's the dentist? I'm smarter than he is, so I think I'll become a dentist. And there was no dental school in Arizona. So she was accepted at Georgetown and Washington University. And she said to me, if you were to follow me, which one would you want to go to? And I said, well, honey, if you go to Georgetown, D.C., I won't even get an interview. That's just all the red hot journalists go there. If you go to St. Louis, I can probably get on. And the plan was, we would, since she was an Arizona kid, the plan was we would stay here until she graduated, and then we'd go west. I had a job offer in Denver. And we got here, and it was so much fun. And I liked the town, and it was just a great time. I said, let's not leave right away.
Yeah.
And then I got the columnist job, and meanwhile she was working as a dentist and building a practice. And then the next thing you know, we're having children.
Yeah.
So it was really like that country western song, came into town for a one-night stand, looks like my plan fell through. So it wasn't like I made a conscious decision. Dan, when I grew up in Chicago, and when I left Chicago, I thought that I was probably done with the Midwest. So kind of odd that, I wasn't. So.
Yeah. And I read somewhere that, you maintain your loyalty, which is very sad, to the Cubs. And your son, he's a Cardinal fan. Your daughter remained a Cubs fan.
Right.
But to this day, you're a Cubby fan. Oh, but producer John be happy to know that you're a Blues fan, right?
Oh yes, absolutely. When I left Chicago, I gave up the Blackhawks, the Bears, the Bulls, but you just never give up the baseball team you grew up with.
Yeah.
There's some. I lived and died with the Cubs when they were 7th out of 8 teams every year. And then the league went to 10 teams, and the Cubs came in 9th. And I thought, and when Leo DeRocher had taken over the team, and he said, well, one thing I can guarantee you is this is not a 9th place team, and then next year they came in 10th.
He was right.
But how you lived on the south side of Chicago?
I did.
Well, how did you become a...
Well, the south side was mostly White Sox fans.
Right.
And the White Sox were good in those days. But my father hated the Comiskey's, who owned the White Sox. And of course, my dad had never met the Comiskey's. The Comiskey's had never heard of Art McClellan. But my dad had an ability to like hold a grudge, and he didn't like the Comiskey's, so he hated the White Sox. And my father was the kind of guy that you didn't really push it, just thought, okay, we and my mother, she kind of liked the White Sox, Nellie Fox and Billy Pierce, but I was a strict Cub fan. I mean, the best days of my childhood were the rare days when the Cubs won and the Sox lost. Oh, yeah. I walked to school with
When's the last time you've been to a Cubs home game?
I think it's been about 2 years.
Okay. It's one of my favorite stadiums.
Oh, it is.
Nothing more fun
Yeah,
than
yeah.
going there.
Now I was very unhappy when they put in lights.
Right.
Yeah.
And I went to that first night game and it got rained out. And I thought, God is speaking. He's crying.
Yes.
But so I was unhappy with that, and I don't like the big scoreboard in left field.
Yes.
But they still have the center field scoreboard, and you have to put up with,
The neighborhood is still neat.
yeah, with,
Oh,
with,
so-
with changes.
Yeah.
Murphy's
Bleachers, all fun to go.
Oh, that's
Right.
that's a beautiful
Oh,
thing.
Speaking of Murphy's Bleachers, there was obviously you drank at a lot of places, but the one place that I always thought was fascinating was the Missouri Bar and Grill. It was right there next to the Post-Dispatch. Just about every character in St. Louis had made a pass through there at one point in time. Were you in there a lot?
Oh, yeah. Well, matter of fact, we used to call it the grill of our dreams. And yes, I was there a lot, and it was great. And Rick Hummel, our baseball writer, Hummel got the umpires to come in there. Matter of fact, you remember Cowboy Joe West?
Oh, I just saw him the other day.
Yeah, I just talked
saw
to
him the
him.
other day
Okay.
at Barlino's.
Oh, okay, well, I wrote a column not too long ago about if downtown is to become vibrant again, they have to tolerate drinking because the lubricant for all of the downtown activity was beer.
Yeah.
And Rita, who is Joe West's wife,
Yeah.
Rita sent me a note and said, oh, she read that column, and Joe, and they remember the good old days.
Yeah.
So yeah, I spent an inordinate amount of time at the grill.
Yeah,
I just saw them Thursday night after Guns N' Roses.
That's so crazy.
At Filoni's. They were there, and then I talked to them, and I was telling them about the podcast, and she was like, "You have to put him on. You need to bring." So he gave me his number.
Yeah.
Oh,
Joe West.
Who's that? Cowboy Joe West?
Cowboy Joe West.
Did I tell you that?
Oh,
He's a character.
Yes,
he would be
think-
fun to have.
Oh,
on.
Joe would have story after story.
Oh man, and that would be incredible. Bill, before we wrap up, I have to say that the thousands of columns you've written, the articles you've written, you have a ability to kind of tell us who you are through those, and just your method of writing kind of tells us. If I was never met you before, I think I could picture who you are and the kind of person you are, and it's just a down to earth, unassuming, humble guy, and we appreciate that. But one thing you did that I want our listeners to know. So one of the days when you were whooping my ass in tennis, I told you about my 72-year-old sister, Marion. And I don't know how this came up, but Marion told me that one of the things on her bucket list is she said, I would love to sit down for a cup of coffee with Bill McClellan. And I said, and I remember her saying that like a year prior. So we were playing.
What are you doing tomorrow?
No, we were wrapping up. Yeah. We were wrapping up playing tennis. And I told Bill this story. And like most people would say, either no, or I get that 1,000 times, go to hell. Or they'd say, have her call me. Bill said, hey, can you give me her number? And Bill called my sister, and they went and had coffee for an hour. Now, my sister's, she talks about that forever. She regrets she didn't get a picture with you. But do you remember that?
I borrowed money from her, I think. I was afraid you'd bring that up.
Well, I'm here to get it now. But that just tells. Do you believe
I
that?
want to add a little bit about Bill and just reading your articles over the years, and you really do. You are like St. Louis's columnist. You know what I mean?
Well, thank you very much.
And just the stories he tells over the years, and
there was no malice behind any of your stories. They were just from your heart. And I always appreciated, when I was working a day watch, I'd always get the paper in the first thing in the morning, and your article was the first one I'd read.
Right.
Well, thank you very much for that, Tommy.
Yeah, so we so appreciate you coming on and tolerating our
Tomfoolery.
tomfoolery.
Hey, we said every time, but we always say, ask them if you want to come back. But I would love you to come back.
I'd love you to
well,
have.
I enjoyed this too, and you guys threw in a free drink.
That's all we get.
Bill, thank you very much.
Hey,
Appreciate
thank you,
guys
Dan.
seeing
Sure,
again. Yeah,
sure,
that was
sure.
awesome.